and introduce me to the people who own their homes around this great city. Those beautiful homes with gardens and flowers, those magnificent homes so lovely in their art. And I will introduce you to the very best people in character as well as in enterprise in our city, and you know I will. A man is not really a true man until he owns his own home, and they that own their homes are made more honorable and honest and pure and true and economical and careful by owning the home. For a man to have money, even in large sums, is not an inconsistent thing. We preach against covetousness, and you know we do in the pulpit, and oftentimes preach against it so long and use the terms about filthy lucre so extremely that Christians get the idea that when we stand in the pulpit, we believe it is wicked for any man to have money until the collection basket goes around. And then we almost swear at the people because they don't give more money. Oh, the inconsistency of such doctrines as that. Money is power, and you ought to be reasonably ambitious to have it. You ought because you can do more good with it than you could without it. Money printed your Bible. Money builds your churches. Money sends your missionaries, and money pays your preachers, and you would not have many of them either if you did not pay them. I am always willing that my church should raise my salary, because the church that pays the largest salary always raises it the easiest. You never knew an exception to it in your life. The man who gets the largest salary can do the most good with the power that is furnished to him. Of course he can, if his spirit be right to use it for what it is given to him. I say then, you ought to have money. If you can honestly attain unto riches in Philadelphia, it is your Christian and godly duty to do so. It is an awful mistake of these pious people to think you must be awfully poor in order to be pious. Some men say, "Don't you sympathize with the poor people?" Of course I do, or else I would not have been lecturing these years. I won't give in but what I sympathize with the poor, but the number of poor who are to be sympathized with is very small. To sympathize with a man whom God has punished for his sins, thus to help him when God would still continue a just punishment, is to do wrong, no doubt about it. And we do that more than we help those who are deserving. While we should sympathize with God's poor, that is, those who cannot help themselves, let us remember there is not a poor person in the United States who was not made poor by his own shortcomings or by the shortcomings of someone else. It is all wrong to be poor anyhow. Let us give in to that argument and pass that to one side. A gentleman gets up back there and says, "Don't you think there are some things in the world that are better than money?" Of course I do, but I am talking about money now. Of course there are some things higher than money. Oh yes, I know by the grave that has left me standing alone that there are some things in the world that are higher and sweeter and purer than money. Well do I know there are some things higher and grander than gold. Love is the grandest thing on God's earth, but fortunate the lover who has plenty of money. Money is power. Money is force. Money will do good as well as harm. In the hands of good men and women, it could accomplish, and it has accomplished, good. I hate to leave that behind me. I heard a man get up in a prayer meeting at our city and thank the Lord he was one of God's poor. Well, I wonder what his wife thinks about that. She earns all the money that comes into that house, and he smokes a part of that on the veranda. I don't want to see any more of the Lord's poor of that kind, and I don't believe the Lord does. And yet there are some people who think that in order to be pious, you must be awfully poor and awfully dirty. That does not follow at all. while we sympathize with the poor, let us not teach a doctrine like that. Yet the age is prejudiced against advising a Christian man, or as a Jew would say, a godly man, from attaining unto wealth. The prejudice is so universal, and the years are far enough back, I think, for me to safely mention that years ago up at Temple University, there was a young man in our theological school who thought he was the only pious student in that department. He came into my office one evening and sat down by my desk and said to me, "Mr. President, I think it is my duty, sir, to come in and labor with you." "What has happened now?" said he. "I heard you say at the academy at the Pierce School commencement that you thought it was an honorable ambition for a young man to desire to have wealth, and that you thought it made him temperate, made him anxious to have a good name, and made him industrious.